Hey team, this week the Better Dads Club podcast is 10 episodes in. We are in the double digits and I'm super excited and grateful for you for sitting and watching. And if you're enjoying these podcasts, I would love to hear a little bit of feedback about, what you're enjoying about them, what has been some of your key takeaways. This week, I sat down with Nathan Seiuli from Pillar NZ. Nathan is a father of three who at the age of 30 or approaching 30, I should say, decided to take a leap of faith and focus on his legacy and looking to build that over the next 10 to 20 years. And he's done that with Pillar. So if you're anything like me, you might have some concerns or some questions around AI and governance and how we are implementing these things in our societies and what the future holds, or how we're protecting the freedoms for our children and how we're going to integrate all of this stuff into our lives. For me, it's definitely been some concerns and some thinking around it, but the conversation with Nathan really gave me some hope. We talk a little bit about his family history, being the son of an immigrant Samoan who didn't come to Auckland from Samoa, but instead ended up in one of the whitest, coldest parts of the country, and the development and growth that came out of that. And then at the end of the conversation, we also get quite political, with New Zealand being in an election year this year. So we sort of cover some of the topics and some of the thinking around that. So we'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that. Enjoy. Alrighty. Well, Nathan, good evening. Welcome along to the Better Dads Club podcast. Thanks for being with me tonight. Yeah, thanks for being with me, man.
Good to be here. Sorry, we're easing in, No, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, no, look, I'm excited to have you on here because we're in this digital age that we're living in. It seems to me that Pillar, you guys, from what I've seen, you just kind of popped up on my feed one day, and I think you were talking about VPNs and privacy, personal privacy, and just kind of making sure that we're looking after ourselves. And part of this whole Better Dads Club podcast is around educating ourselves so that we are aware of what's going on and how we can protect ourselves, but also more importantly, our family and our kids. So really keen to dive into some of the cool stuff that you guys are doing, what you're seeing locally, what you're seeing maybe internationally as well. And then also some of the wins that you guys are having with the work that you do as far as, the formation of policies, or explain a little bit more about what you do. But I'll hand the mic over to you.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here for episode 10,
Double digits.
Yeah, mate, I'm 10th cab off the rank, so it's good, mate. If we were picking the All Blacks, I'd be that prime position, so it's good. But no, so obviously I'm the executive director of Pillar, got a small team that I lead, and we do four things really. We do legal advocacy, so representing people in court through funding their cases. We're not lawyers. I should make that really clear. We're not lawyers, but we have a network of lawyers that we work with. We do legislative lobbying or legislative advice. So that's sort of what you referenced there, around just providing commentary and advice to government through select committees or even closer partnerships in that when invited in, and providing different perspectives, usually with civil liberties at the focus, but also more digital stuff is coming to the forefront. Then we do what we call speaking or commentary. So this would be speaking and our podcast and our multiple channels. And then we do what we call strengthening. So community events, engagement. We go to university. We're there for O Week. We're going to be there for Rio Week soon. Want to have a presence across the country at universities, hopefully in the very, very near future. But just trying to get out there and engage people on some of these democratic questions, some of the social and cultural issues, just trying to foster discussion and debate and trying to figure out why people believe what they believe, and if we can convince them on a different point of view. So that's sort of what we do. We frame that, I should have said, through 4 S's. So we stand, we shift, we speak, and we strengthen. But that's effectively what Pillar does, 9 to 5, 7 days a week.
Right on. So when did you start?
We launched in September last year, so September 2025. We had a pretty short runway just because we had this idea and it just got picked up immediately. In week 1, we got invited to Parliament. We were on ZB. We had hundreds of people follow us. And I think it was indicative of not just our idea or our plan, but the desire for something else in the space that we're trying to present. So we've come up to that 10-month mark, and it's been pretty incredible to see how many people have engaged and the journey we've gone on and the impact that we've been able to have so far. A lot of the stuff we work on doesn't necessarily shift in 10 months in terms of court cases, legal cases, legislative lobbying. A lot of that's a very long process, but we've been able to get some pretty good cut through already in those sort of processes.
Amazing. So what was the shift, to use one of your words? Where have you come from, and what
Yeah.
was the impetus to sort of start this?
So previously, we were with a different organization. We were with the Free Speech Union for various lengths of time. So I was there running events and community, sort of seeing it in support of the CEO. And then we just sort of saw all these issues coming across. I mean, some of your listeners might know the FSU. They've been extremely successful in that realm of protecting speech. And a symptom of success is that everyone wants your help, which is amazing. And at the FSU, we were just inundated. Our ops guy used to just constantly be bringing issues before us where people were desperate for help, and they say, look, have you looked at this? Have you looked at that? And a lot of it was really good, but would fall outside of our remit. And we were really intentional there. So I just asked the question one day, sort of coincided with a few major life events. Like I just turned 30. I was about to have my third kid. And I thought, what do I actually want to achieve in the next 10 years? Is there something that I want to contribute to or establish and build? And effectively sat down while my wife was on leave, and I had that small window of time off as well to support her, and just smashed out like a 50-page document of what I wanted to do in the next decade and boiled it down to about 15 pages, and then it was Pillar. And so that's how we sort of came to it, but was in the civil liberties advocacy space for about 3 years prior. And then before that worked in communities, and I was a pastor for a short season. I was a barber, so always enjoyed talking to people. So sort of done a bunch of different things that sort of had led me here. Not a very traditional path, didn't go to university, didn't finish high school, but have sort of just taken every opportunity in front of me to learn and grow and hopefully make a difference.
It seems to be a trait with most entrepreneurs that they are people that did not do university. I'm guilty of that
Yeah.
myself.
Nice.
I think there's a bit of drive and passion that comes out.
Yeah.
Look, that's really cool in terms of actually sitting down and kind of having that. I guess there's a fork in the road, right? And you're sort of sitting there. Not many people can say that they've sat and actually sort of done that and been with themselves in that. Is that something that you've done before? Is that a process that you've been through?
Not necessarily. When I was like a young 19-year-old, if you had asked me, I would have told you I'm going to be an All Black, as a lot of young 19-year-old guys probably think at that stage of life. And then I sort of went on this journey. When I got saved, effectively, I became a Christian and went on this journey of probably redeciding and rediscovering what the calling on my life was. And where I landed was I knew that I wanted to do something significant for like with my life for God and all these things, and boiled down to sort of helping people and supporting people and working with people and being creative and innovative. And then I just sort of said yes to it with opportunities that popped up at that point. But this was a lot different the second time around, because across 10 years, I achieved all these goals that I wasn't really measuring and keeping track of, but I sort of they just happened to me, sort of, and they were pretty low-hanging fruit, if I'm being really honest. Like I didn't probably have a big view, but two moves to two different cities, and then, like I say, having my third kid and turning 30 probably put me in a position where I had to sort of broaden my perspective. And I just said, okay, what have I been too scared to say? I said, I want to be successful. I want to do something important. I want to make a difference in New Zealand. And it's like kind of hard to say that if you are banking on like your credentials or your abilities. And I was like, well, I don't feel capable or able or even qualified. But I said, but if I was those things, what would I do? And sort of thought outside of that box that I probably had refined myself to through my 20s. And then you came out the other side with like, cool, I want to start this organization that will effectively become New Zealand's largest civil liberties movement. It'll be a platform for many people to come and make their case. It'll be something that encourages debate and free speech, and that protects people who the system has forgotten or let fall through the cracks, and stand on those founding and foundational principles. And then I thought, am I qualified? And I thought, no, but I am good at getting the right people in the room. That's probably what I discovered. I'm a bit of a team builder. So I thought, well, if I can just orchestrate the right people at the right time, maybe this would happen. And to date, that's sort of been the success of Pillar, is bringing the right people in at the right time for the right problem. So yeah.
That's really cool, Nathan. That's really cool to hear. Like the ability to know where your strengths are and to look at that and to take an action step, especially in a time of such uncertainty. I mean, 2 kids already and then expecting the next one. So what, you were on paternity leave as well?
Yeah. So, and you've got some kids, dad's not that helpful with a newborn. So I had all the space. So I was like, I've got a laptop and time, and I'm about to turn 30 and I'm feeling some pressure about what I'm going to do, and that's sort of what pushed me into thinking a bit bigger. Yeah.
How did you overcome the fears or the barriers to, I guess, the internal barriers, when your brain is sitting there going, you're not qualified, you're not this, you're not that.
If I can be super honest, I thought like, my first thought was, well, what's the worst that could happen? I'll give it a try. And if it doesn't work, You know, I've got a pretty supportive extended family. Like my parents are awesome, my in-laws are awesome. I was like, I can't really fail to the degree that I'm probably scared of failing. Like that, no one's gonna really let me go homeless, or you know. So I was very blessed in that regard. And then if I could be super honest, it was a little bit of like, you know, they say don't compare yourself to other people. But I looked around and just saw a lot of people who I was like, this person is an idiot and they're doing amazing. And I was like, it can't be that hard, you know, like genuinely in the space that I was working in, I sort of entered quite into the civil liberties spaces. It's quite legal and political. And you've got all these people that you sort of think, man, they're awesome. And like, they're super smart. And then you start meeting them. And it's like that whole saying of never meet your heroes. Not that anyone was my hero, but it probably just revealed to me that there was like a need for someone who wasn't establishment or institutionalized, and someone who was a little bit rough and a little bit happy to have conflict and like super keen to just get their hands dirty. And that's probably where I saw my skill set was like, look, I can shift something. If you just tell me where to push, I'll push. Or if I can see an issue that I see as a clear injustice, I'm willing to be the voice that speaks up. So that's sort of what I saw. So it's a need for me, probably have character skills that are not hard skills, but will be okay here. And yeah, I'm not that impressed by the other people currently in the space. So why not give it a crack?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that sort of leads to what you guys do, right? In terms of, a lot of people out there doing a lot of talk versus where is the action and where is the action happening? I'm curious, where does this drive come from? Like, have you always been sort of that protector, that guardian around through high school and growing up? Like, where does this come from?
Yeah, I mean, like I grew up like most kids loving like superhero movies and you know superheroes and all this. And then as a Christian, like the books of the Bible that I always gravitated to were the Old Testament books. And if you know anything about the Bible, it's a lot of heroes, like these guys who go out and kill giants, or these guys who fight wars and win battles and things like that. And so I was always like really enamored with the heroic character and the bold or the principled character, the person who would stand up for what they believe in. And I remember really clearly one of my like favorite memories when I was 13, my mum wrote me a card. I think it was for a birthday or something. And I just remember really clearly it says that I would be a voice for people who didn't have a voice, or that I'd be like a lion, like on the front of the card was a lion. And I didn't understand it or appreciate it as a 13-year-old, but as I got older into my 20s and, you know, so 25, 26, I remembered that card. And so, yeah, I think I've always been that person, always happy to be the leader. Never probably put my hand up to be the leader, but would always find that it would be pushed on me, or people would nominate me to be the group leader of a project, and something that I was happy to do. So, yeah, it's been there in senses. My dad's a really strong leader. So I sort of just got to observe him growing up and probably learn a little bit from that.
Talk to me a little bit about your dad. What does your dad do, and what was the relationship like with him growing up?
Yeah, oh, my dad's awesome. He immigrated from Samoa as like a young man to work in a rope factory. They brought like a couple of Samoans to Dunedin for some reason. I don't know if they
Oof.
told them what Dunedin was like, but they like brought my dad to Dunedin to work in this factory, and like he was just so fresh and sort of came over because his older sister was already in Dunedin. And then obviously I showed up a number of years later, but from what I understand, when he arrived, just took advantage of every opportunity in front of him and had a lot of fun as well as working hard. So by the time I showed up, him and my mum were married, and I have an older sister. And for most of my life, if not all of my life, he was self-employed and just did like different entrepreneurial things. Like he was a counselor for a while. He had his own practice. He had like airport shuttles and taxis. He was a radio host. He's done heaps of like weird ass stuff and real crack up stuff. He would always be my school DJ for primary school discos. So that was like a little bit of a cool thing that all the other kids were jealous of, you know, and had a good playlist back in the day with Bob the Builder and whatnot. But yeah, and so, you know, he's my T-ball coach. So he was involved, like he was around and super awesome, eh? Just always supported me, always encouraged me. And obviously I've learned a lot from him, and in terms of how to be a dad and how to be a husband, and, you know, how to be sort of a hard worker and things like that. But yeah, he's great. I love my dad.
Cool. This might sound quite ignorant, but can I just ask some questions in terms of like the culture stuff,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
culturally, right? Like, because, sort of Pacific Island and Samoan culture, well, yeah, Pacific Island culture in general kind of gets this pretty bad rep in terms of like laziness or, just kind of, but also not really sticking out and going out and doing something for you. Like
Mm,
it seems to be from the outside, and this is obviously me talking as a white man,
mm.
but it seems to be quite like, you shouldn't be going out and trying these new things and doing this stuff. So
Yeah.
was that, I mean, have you ever spoken to your dad about that? Because obviously if he's coming to Dunedin, which is probably one
Mm.
of the whitest
Yeah.
areas in the country, as opposed to, somewhere in Auckland, which has
Yeah.
probably got a higher Samoan population than Samoa, right?
It does. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so in terms of, was that something for him that it kind of allowed him to step in and do all these different things? Do you think, kind of being separated from the culture, or do you think he's just kind of
Yeah.
been that kind of person?
50-50, I'd say. Like, hopefully he doesn't mind me telling this story, but when my dad came to New Zealand and he was part of a very small Samoan community, so there wasn't heaps of other Samoans. Obviously, I think it's like 150 skinheads and probably like 10 Samoans, right? So he's got all these stories about early days Dunedin where he got into fights at the petrol station and all sorts. But he started volunteering at a local youth group, and he was a Catholic. And for some reason, he started volunteering at like a Protestant youth group and met my mum. And my mum was like a new believer herself. Her family's not Christian. And as many young people do, they messed around and my mum got pregnant. And then as a result, my dad got excommunicated from the Samoan church because he got this white lady pregnant out of wedlock, and it was like a big deal back then. And it's like 1990. So because of the situation, got forced out into like quite a different space. By the time I was born and was growing up, we were sort of accepted back into the Samoan community a little bit, but not as deeply as like my cousins and things like that. So I grew up really European, really Kiwi, but I think it's probably a blessing in disguise. I don't know how he felt about it at the time, but it sort of forced him out of those comfort zones that you're spot on with. Like, it absolutely is the way that you're sort of framing it around. There's not a heap of culture that says like bet on yourself or back yourself, or sort of it would be perceived as prideful and arrogant, as opposed to like ambitious or like optimistic. So now, like, my dad actually works in the business school in Otago, and he helps young Pacific Islanders sort of get there without losing their culture. And my dad never lost his culture. When I was 9, I went to Samoa for the first time, and he got a title name and everything. So he did really well to retain both sides of that, and he integrated really well into the Kiwi community while still being like loosely connected to the Samoan community. And then when he became quite successful through his businesses, of course they welcomed him back. They're like, "Oh, yeah, you should come back over, like should be part of this, So that was sort of when I grew up, is like they started trying to bring him back in because he had been fairly successful with like property investment and a couple of his other business ventures. So yeah, I sort of missed the hardest season for him. But when he moved over and the Samoans excommunicated him, he just started hanging out with all the Māoris. So my dad's fluent in Samoan, Te Reo, and English, which is really hilarious. And he'll often get up at events now and do a welcome in Samoan and then speak Māori, and people will be like, "Wait, you Samoan or you Māori?" So it's sort of like his little party trick that he likes to do. And then he's like obviously very fluent in English, like no accent, no nothing. So yeah, when I look at like his cultural versus like how he's become a Kiwi, because he's very much a Kiwi and very much Samoan, he's done a really good job holding those things in tandem. And that's probably why I don't like a lot of the conversation that happens today around cultural identity, because I know that I've seen it firsthand, that you can be successful regardless of where you came from or who your parents are or what color your skin is. And like I've had a firsthand experience seeing my dad like do that. So I don't have heaps of time for the people who like to bank on those things.
Right. And how has that shaped you in terms of your development?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I grew up Kiwi as like, and my granddad was Scottish. People like my family say I'm the most like him, like my mum's dad. But I love my Samoan culture, not as integrated into it in terms of like language or even like lifestyle is probably what I could be, but I'm really comfortable with that. Really love like going to Samoa and seeing everyone. But also when I'm there, I feel a real desire from the people of Samoa for progress as well. And they're looking at what we're doing in New Zealand and trying to sort of evolve culturally too. So I think there's sort of I'm stuck in the middle, of like people think I should be more like them, but then I feel like they want to be more like me, and then I'm like, oh, let's just be happy with who we are.
Yeah. And how is that shaping how you're showing up as a dad?
Yeah, I mean, probably haven't thought about it. My boys are at school, or my oldest boy's at school, and it's a lot more cultural integration than when I was at school. So he's doing like Kapahaka and Pacific Group. He's doing like a Samoan dance soon at school, and that's something that I never did at school. So it's sort of weird. It's sort of like jumped my generation and like the cultural integration stuff. We were probably what would be considered racist in my day, but he's got all the benefits of being part of a 2026 schooling system. But yeah, so how does it affect me? We talk about Samoa. I'm going to take them to Samoa one day, but we're Kiwis first and foremost. We're New Zealanders proud. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. In terms of pillar, it's an acronym. You're here, you're sort of freedom fighters, you're here for personal liberties and all that sort of thing. Can you just talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. rights. So Pillar initially started as like, I said, the concept is restoring the pillars of democracy. And the reason that was sort of a play on the Greek origins of democracy. So pillars very, very common in Greek architecture. And then the acronym came second. I sort of looked at it. I was like, how can I make this, how can I market this better? And then protecting individual life, liberty, and rights sort of came out of that. I was like, oh man, this is ideal. Well, initially I was a bit hesitant on using both L's. I wasn't going to go with life just because of some of the controversial issues around like abortion and euthanasia and how they integrate into that civil liberties, individual liberty conversation. A lot of diehard libertarians will say, that they back those things, where for me, as someone who believes in individual liberty, but is also a Christian, I really had to wrestle with that. And the question I effectively came to was, well, is there a chance for liberty if life is not present? So for liberty, there must be life. Therefore, I feel like I can comfortably take that position on those life issues while still advocating for personal autonomy, personal responsibility, personal choice, a freedom of choice. And yeah, so that's how Pillar came to be and why we're called Pillar. And then, yeah, like you say, we're a couple of mongrels, happy for a fight, happy to do some freedom fighting. Like I say, my expertise is in networking and team building, like bringing the right people in. The court case we've got going through the courts at the moment, I'm not on the stand helping that guy, Auckland citizen. I brought in an amazing lawyer. He's like Harvey Specter, this guy. That's why I hired him. I was like, man, look at this guy's the man. But yeah, and then all of our legislative stuff, like Nick and Arian, who are awesome, my team members and co-founders, they're both university educated. So they've got the credentials and they do a fantastic job. And then we plug into different sort of stakeholders and key communicators when we do legislative drafting and just get other eyes over it. So everything we produce, we've got a couple of filters that it goes through in terms of quality, in terms of accuracy, and we're communicating with some pretty high level people. We just, we don't have them on payroll effectively, and they do it because they believe in the vision. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so obviously freedom's a key point of that, right? And
yeah,
as men, even for most men, freedom is a key value. Whether men actually take stock of what their values are. I've always kind of had the belief, that you can do anything you want as long as you're not hurting anybody or preventing other people from doing the things that they want. So
exactly.
That kind of comes down to a little bit of a piece of like, well, if I'm doing something, then I'm going out and I'm trying to give to the world. I'm trying to participate. I'm trying to build something. And then I'd like some help and some support, but I'm not going to force somebody else to do it if they don't want to. And then also, like, as long as I'm not there kind of beating people down and, making life miserable for other people, then that's the other side of it. The day and age that we're living in now, we've gone through COVID. We obviously saw a lot of liberties taken, a lot of freedoms taken away, enforcement from the government, and just globally as well. And I think this is where I first came across the Free Speech Union, was during that time, because I really appreciated the fact that it was like, hey, no, we do need to ask questions, and let's what do you mean? You're like, this is the pillar of truth that you're speaking to. Like you're getting one side of some information, and that needs to be questioned and challenged, because there are clearly very smart people that are questioning and challenging things on the other side as well. There's that whole piece of, trust the science. But science and the scientific process is literally, we got to ask the questions. And it's the same thing with law, right? You have this piece of legislation, and then we can can we challenge it? And we do all of that. So, there's this bit where, as a democracy and being a functional democratic society, we do need to have the information, and so that we can ask better questions and not just have it be like, this person said that, and therefore we're going to outsource our information and intel to them. In terms of the work that you guys are doing with, I guess, sort of the pushback on AI and AI legislation at the moment, can you speak a little bit to that? Because that's something that really kind of, I guess, concerns me, and I suppose it's one of those unknown things, because it's happening so rapidly, especially when we've come out of COVID, where culturally there's a lot of division here from that, because there's people on both sides of the fence that are kind of going, oh, I did this for this reason, and then, but I'll be honest with you, and I'm gonna say this right now, I haven't met anybody that feels regretful that they didn't take the vaccine. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that are regretful, and a lot of people that are angry that they did, and especially in light of the new, obviously, the evidence that's come out around Chris Hipkins and the information that he had around myocarditis and teenagers in that dose, and still pushed it.
Yeah.
Which I think kind of really puts him in a compromised position as well. How do you see this working, or this playing out in the digital age, especially where, we can have, well, we've had the government, I think in the last few days or earlier, what was it, end of last week, I think they rushed something through in terms of AI is going to be, going through and reviewing people's ability to get benefits and that sort of thing. And how do we ensure that the democratic process, or that this legislation is going to be right and it's going to be moving through for everyone without encroaching into our personal identities too much and without us giving away everything that we have?
Yeah. No, well, I think you've probably identified a trend around the world, which is obviously the rise of AI and this move towards efficiency that probably negates a lot of the foundational thinking we need to do. So how do I answer that question? I think we're seeing right now the AI bubble is probably a lot more fragile than we give it credit for. Microsoft has recently moved away from AI agents and back to human engineers because of the cost of running AI. Unless we unlock some sort of nuclear battery option or far more efficient energy, it's going to be really hard to maintain the growth of AI. I don't know heaps about it, but I've been lucky to talk to a couple of really smart people about it. So they're concerned to varying degrees, but probably not like Y2K level concerned, which is encouraging. But yeah, like this government is obviously proposing a lot of cuts to services and departments, which I actually am in favor of. I think we spend way too much on government. I think there's way too many bureaucrats in Wellington. Do we replace them with everything with AI? Well, I think AI does some effective patchwork, but the like you're right, the legislation that underpins them and the code of conduct and the policies that underpins it all needs to be really well written. And at the core of it, it's just like, is New Zealand BORA, which is our Bill of Rights Act, is that foundational to how this interacts with human life? Is this foundational to how it interacts with the everyday Kiwi experience? And are we ensuring that people are being treated to that standard outlined in NZ BORA? So I think we can do it well. I'm hesitant with a lot of the surveillance stuff that is being brought in through the police, but also it's hard to argue with some of the results. So that's the nuance that we're working through with Pillar. Like, I'm really happy for people to challenge me because I've criticized the police's use of AI, and they say, well, crime is down. And I said, that's an amazing statistic that crime is actually down. No one's going to argue that, but at what cost? Are we giving up core freedoms? And I actually think sometimes the checks and balances that exist through making it not as efficient as it could be through paperwork or regulation or oversight, the cost you incur there financially is worth the cost in terms of personal and individual sovereignty and privacy. So that's kind of like a broad overview of how I approach that AI question. Is it's unavoidable that we're moving towards more AI. Like, that's just the way of the world. We had, horses and carriages, then we moved to cars, and then, we've got the internet. We didn't have the internet before, and then the internet gets bigger and better and better, and then now it's AI. So it's a natural evolution of humanity, I think, but we have to be really wise about how we implement it and integrate it. And that's the other thing is, can you live a life unintegrated? Probably, well, hopefully, right now, yes, you still can. Hopefully, we can still maintain that for people who choose not to opt into some of these services and systems, which is where we're always arguing as well with things like digital ID. New Zealand first brought in a bill that made sure that companies, businesses, local businesses, alcohol stores still accepted physical ID, and they're doing the same with physical cash. So there's some of these measures that are coming in. But yeah, hopefully that made a little bit of sense.
No, it did. I mean, this is the point, right? It's that, how do we bring it in a way that protects us as private citizens? And I think that's the biggest word, private citizens. And this is, as you mentioned before, this is the debate that's going around the world right now. We've had, King Charles, announced a couple of weeks ago in terms of we're going to go with digital ID here in the UK, even though there's millions and millions of people in the UK that are completely against this. And part of it, I think, is because of what happened during COVID, where, that the whole vaccination passports and all of these kind of things were coming to play. And it was like, you can't participate in society unless you're doing this. So, looking at where the world is now, there's a world that we've got wars going on in obviously Iran right now. And, there's this undercurrent of, this is all stuff that could happen very easily again. And with the use of AI, could now become implemented incredibly quickly. I think, there's a piece, as I mentioned to you before we got started on this conversation, where, I've got I'm a Google user, I'm a Google account. And now I've been recently made aware that Google is like scanning all of the emails and has a vast amount of knowledge about me that I haven't necessarily consented to, and I'm unaware of what it is. And it's that whole piece of, if the powers that be choose to take us in a certain direction, how do we the people continue with having a voice and maintaining that democratic process.
It's funny you say Google's got all this information about you that you don't necessarily know what it is or what they're going to do with it. A critic would say to you, well, what have you got to hide? Which is a very short-sighted response.
Mm.
Because like you say, if the powers that be, and that is the thing, if the powers that be, every tool in the world is developed in a sense to build something, to develop something, to advance something. It's the user who determines what that thing is, though, whether it's good or evil. The comedian Jimmy Carr, he had a clip go viral a few months ago, and it sort of pops up every now and then on my algorithm. You've probably seen it. And he talks about the cost of running an authoritarian state. And he talks about the Gestapo, he talks about World War II, and he says, look, to do a full-scale Gestapo-like police force that monitors every word, every thought, almost every interaction was an exorbitant cost. It was millions, billions of dollars in today's day and age, but with AI now we can do it for a fraction of the price.
And on top of that, we've bought the devices and we've put them into our houses. This is Alexa and even your TV and everything that's got a microphone in it that's connected to the internet.
Everything with Wi-Fi connection, this is what people need to know, has backdoor access. In the UK, there was a story that I read last week about these home networks that had banded together for the CCP. And it was like, let's say your street, there's 30 modems on that street. They've all now interconnected and interlinked and made a network on your street. Now there's monitoring of everything that happens on your street, from what phones are in the area to what texts and emails you're receiving and sending, what content you're consuming, your IP address, where it's going here and there. Like, we are in the future. Like, this is full scale. We don't see the flying cars, but everything else by every other measure is there, right? So the question is, what do we do about it? Like, is it good? Is it bad? Well, like I said, it has the potential to be amazing. It has the potential to take us to the next level. We as people, though, as individuals and sovereign citizens, need to protect our rights. And COVID was, as horrible as it was, and I know a lot of people are still recovering from that period of time, whether it be emotional, physical, even spiritual in a sense. It showed us what happens when we just go with the prevailing orthodoxy or the prevailing narrative or with the expert without having any question as to the implication on the individual, right? It's sort of been this perfect test run, and even people who weren't skeptical of the government before now have a pretty healthy dose of skepticism. And I said to you before we started that a government is effectively necessary for a democratic society to thrive. Like, we need to have a government, otherwise it gets very Lords of the Flies vibes. But they have to be beholden to the people, to the will of the people, and they have to exercise that power in favor of what the people have requested. So I think you try to do a lockdown now anywhere in the world, bar China, Russia, Iran, you're not getting anything. I think every Western liberal nation, from the UK to the US to New Zealand and Australia, Canada, even through Europe, you would struggle to get a lockdown in those nations now off the back of what we saw during COVID and all the information that's coming to light now. So that's why I think it's going to be more of a digital restrictions that are the huge threat that we need to address first. Because in terms of locking people in their houses for 8 weeks on end, you're not going to see that same level of compliance. But yeah, it was a good wake up call. Like, I was not very skeptical of the government prior to COVID, and that's what sort of like woke me up to the individual sort of civil liberties conversation a lot. I thought, why would the government care about me? And they didn't really care about me necessarily, but they did things that affected me, so I should care about them and what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, we totally should. And I mean, that was part of what happened in COVID. We saw that in the UK, right? That there's big lockdowns. Nobody can have anything within the UK governments, and they're having their gatherings, their parties, their dinners, and all that sort of stuff too. So it's the rules for me, rules for thee kind of thing that's going on. And probably the same thing happened here in New Zealand. We just don't necessarily know it just yet.
Yeah.
Just going back to that piece around the, if you haven't done anything wrong, you've got nothing to hide. For me, there's a bit of ignorance there, because it's not just around I've done nothing wrong and I've got nothing to hide. It's that this is my life and these are my personal things. And what we've seen in New Zealand recently, where we've seen with our DHBs, we've seen hacks of people's private health information data. So if things become centralized, then what is to stop? It kind of makes it easier to hack, because if you've just got one thing to hack into instead of multiple DHB systems that things are going on. So kind of we're sort of spreading the risk a little bit there from hackers and safety and security. There's another piece where there was a case in the UK where there was a photo of schoolgirls that was taken and just posted up online. I think they were a hockey team or a volleyball team or something like that, some sports team, and they posted it up, and then the school got blackmailed because somebody had taken those photos of those girls and created some nasty videos with them, and then basically said, we're going to release this unless you pay us this money. So the other piece is like targeting. Like if you've got X amount of money, whether it's, you know, a large amount or a small amount, there's risks of blackmail, there's risks of, you know, just what you can and cannot do. And, you know, I think this is one of those things that, I mean, it's, I don't know if I agree with you in terms of, like, I agree with you in terms of it will be hard and difficult for Western cultures to enforce a lockdown on the people, because there will be a lot of pushback. But there's a part of me that's seeing how easy it can be done. And especially when not only do we live, as you mentioned before, we live in the future. Not only do we live in the day and age of AI, that we may not have flying cars, but we have got millions of humanoid robots being built right now. And I've seen some videos of them, and I think it was from Stephen Bartlett, Diary of CEO, had shared a thing, and they were dancing robots. And I was sitting there watching the video. That ain't fucking dancing. That's fucking kung fu. Like those like kung fu robots. And I've said to a friend of mine who's like a black belt in jiu-jitsu, I'm like, bro, like your jiu-jitsu isn't going to do anything against a metal thing that's coming into your house. Like if it's people on people, sure, there's that whole thing from the 60s, right, where there was war, and then, you know, you have the hippie that comes in and puts the flower in the gun. But if it's a robot that is being controlled from a centralized thing, and you are a citizen that should be in your home, this is part of the thing that concerns me a lot, actually, around this in terms of the future, because, you know, I agree with you that AI is a great tool. I use it, but we need to make sure that there is a safety switch. And this is one of those things that Isaac Asimov always talked about in his writing, right? Like the iRobot, you know, it's like, oh, well, first the robot it's like the, you know, first do no harm, or a robot can never harm a human.
Yeah.
But is that happening? And again, what laws and what legislations can be put in? I know Bernie Sanders in the United States is asking a lot of these questions at the moment. How much sort of time he's getting, I don't know, but I've definitely been following his channel and some of the things that he's putting up on YouTube. And he seems as a wise elder, he sounds like the person that we need to be listening to at this time and asking these questions, because there are a lot of people in our generation that are just like, yeah, let's go for it, you know?
Yeah.
Let's bring it on. Oh, there's nothing we can do to stop it. But actually, like, we are the dads. We are the parents now. We're not the children in the other room watching TV or playing toys while the adults are in the other room having the conversation. We are the adults that are needing to be having this conversation and going, okay, well, in the next 20 years, if the acceleration of what we've had in the last 5, 6, 7, 10 years is going to happen again, and we know that it does, because computing is exponentially faster in the way that it develops in the technology. You know, what are we doing as people to ensure that, or as parents, to ensure that our children are going to have freedom and experience life as they should, to be able to do and follow the pursuits that they want? I think jobs is also another kind of big thing. Like, okay, cool. Well, AI is going to replace all of our jobs and we're not going to need to work. Well, what are people going to need to do? Like, we do work. Jobs. Yeah. There are things that like, and I'm sure that we'll probably adjust and all that sort of stuff too. But as a society, you know, and as you said before, in terms of there might be digital restrictions that kind of get taken away. But you know, people can get very limited into what they can and cannot do, and I think that's just going to kind of stifle us. And that to me is the thing that scares me. If we're not putting the right legislations and putting the right pieces in place. And frankly, I think that we are far too late. I think our governments around the world have been far too late on asking these questions as well. So do you see some hope? And, you know, you've got 3 kids, that's 2 more than me, and yours are older than mine as well. But you're in this space. Like, do you see some hope with the legislations that are coming through and the changes that are being made and the things that are being challenged?
Yeah. Oh, well, yes and no. I mean, my hope isn't in the government or in legislation. My hope is in my house, right? It's my job as a dad, first and foremost, before anything outside of those walls touches them, interacts with them, integrates into their life, that I would have equipped them with the tools emotionally, mentally, and physically as well, you know, to handle some of those challenges. People often talk about the demographic issue. Oh, you know, birth rates are down, you know, da-da-da. And it's like, Yeah, that doesn't stress me. My birth rates are pretty high, only one man. I've reproduced three, and there's this funny thing that Charlie Kirk used to say where he said, all the people who hate me don't have kids and they're all going to die and my kids will be here. So, it's like, it's that whole thing of, I'm handling my house first. And Jordan Peterson talks about this: be responsible for your family, your immediate family, then your broader family, maybe then your community if you've been trustworthy there. And maybe if you've done a good job at those other levels, you'll be entrusted with bigger community or a bigger responsibility with the nations and things like that. So for me, I'm starting, they say charity starts at home. For me, it's education, it's online education. I've got a 7-year-old, and that's how young they're asking for devices now. He's asked me like 3 times this year, can I have a phone? Can I have a laptop? Can I have an iPad? And as a dad, I don't need to look on what the government said. I just say, no, piss off. You're not allowed, Like, why? Because I'm your dad, and when you turn 18, you can have one of those things. That's what I say to her. So that's the first. So it's multifaceted. The other thing around technological advancement is it is going to be really hard to stop externally, which is why internally or sort of within our limited reach, we need to start with our own families. But just everything needs people to buy it, to pay it for it, to use it, to be a consumer. So opting out of consuming, and I actually think there'll be a development in the consumer market where businesses will market whether they're AI free. It's sort of like what you see now where people get like a rainbow tick or an eco tick. You'll be able to get like a organic human tick, where this product was brought to you without any AI or robot use. I think that'll become a huge industry in the next sort of 5 to 10 years. And there'll be someone, man, I should capitalize on that. We should do that together. That could be something. We got to get in there early with the licensing rights. So that could be a whole new market, where like this is a human business, human made for humans. Well, I'm giving us gold right now. What the heck, Anyway.
I can edit this out.
No, leave this in, because I'm telling you, it's going to be the thing, But when, so anyway, what am I saying? I'm saying education starts at home. We're responsible there first and foremost. Not worried about the government, not worried about the markets, not worried about the businesses. I want to build strong, resilient men. I've got 3 sons. 2 of them do jiu-jitsu. I do jiu-jitsu. I take them to church every week. They go to school. My wife is an incredible wife, stay-at-home mum. She teaches them to cook, to bake. Like, these are things that we've instilled at the very earliest stages. Before I came on this call, I was lying on my bed with the 2 older ones because they were in a sleep yet, and we were reading together. And I do this thing where I read a page, then the 7-year-old reads a page. I read a page, and just little things like that. We're it's quality connection time. We're there together doing something, and he gets to show me how he can read. It's those little things that I think when I'm on my deathbed, I'll remember really fondly, and I won't remember about all the stress about AI, and I won't worry about all the stress of the government who's trying to get me, because I ultimately have faith in humanity underpinning all of this. That if the government really came for us, that we would, in New Zealand and in Western liberal nations, we would stand up and push back. I know people like to say, oh, if the Nazis came, I'd say no, but like I really hope that we have learned from history. How many times we're going to have to history have it repeat itself before we actually can stand up and say no. So that's where I sort of am. I don't know if that answers completely. Like you're so right about the job market, but I think humans will always be more creative, more innovative, and have more value than computers. They won't be as efficient, but I think that ultimately we'll find our way to a happy medium in the space.
Well, that's the other side of it, right? Is it I think my entire life growing up, there's been talk or conversation around the idea of basic universal income, but then it's when you integrate that basic universal income with here's where you live, here's the how we're going to monitor you, here's the things that you need to be doing to ensure that you're getting this basic level income, and it's all being monitored by AI, and it's all being sort of switched off. It's like that's that dystopian thing that's very people can sit there and they can say, and I've got friends of mine, they're like, oh, it's so conspiratorial and all that sort of stuff, and it's like, yeah, but just look at China. Like that's literally what is happening in China. And you jaywalk in China, there's cameras there that watch, and instantly money's deducted out of your bank account. You don't even get 100%. To challenge it. You don't get to do it, and then so there is that bit where it's like, okay, I want to believe in Western democracy. I want to believe in this idea. But there
hasn't been a better system, honestly. Like, people love to bring up China. Oh, it's so technologically advanced. Oh, it's so amazing, living in the future. Everyone's happy there. They got free healthcare. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they also can't say the CCP sucks, or them or their family will be imprisoned. You can't even be openly Christian in many parts of China. So I often read my my Bible at a cafe. If I tried that there, mate, I'm in jail straight away. Might do me some favors, get some workouts and things like that. But So I always say there hasn't been a better system. And even the most fierce defenders of democracy, Western liberal democracy, have been able to admit its flaws. Like, of course there's flaws. There's no such thing as a perfect system. All these other people are trying to sell us on socialism and Marxism and communism. Like, they won't admit that their system is flawed as well. But democracy to date has been the best system. And it's funny you say, like, people want a UBI. And I've often heard the argument for UBI be that so people are free to do the things that they love. But you only really love things that you have to work hard in order to carve out space to do.
Mm,
Like, for me, everything that I enjoy doing, I only enjoy doing it because it's a reprieve from the things I don't like doing. And if there's nothing that I don't like doing, there's nothing that I do like doing. And you just become nothing. You become a blob. You're like Wally. You float around in your space chair, you know? The feeling that you get from working hard, from achieving something, from like a 9 to 5, 5 days a week, which is not hard at all, by the way. There's people digging ditches around the world. But then you get to the weekend and you get to do your 9 holes of golf, or you get to, like, I like to go and do jiu-jitsu. That is that dopamine release where I'm like, this is what I work hard for. When my wife stays at home and is able to be a homemaker, that when I'm standing in Parliament or flying somewhere or doing something, again, not very hard life, I'm just putting out there. But, like that for me is why I work.
yeah. No, that's really great, man. And look, I was really excited that you shared, in terms of what you guys are doing in the home to help grow your boys, like the jujitsu, the stories, the no screens, no phones. Like, I'm co-parenting, we're separated, but we both do share the same values in terms of around screen time, in terms of food and that sort of stuff as well. Like, I'm a big pusher for organic food. I've been doing that since God knows when. At least when I started out as a personal trainer, and kind of the idea that, like, the food that we're having is super important, but we need to be challenging ourselves. We need to be growing. We need to be following our dream. But, at that young age, if you're getting distracted by screens, and, as dads, or as parents, like, I understand it's so easy to go, cool, here's this device. Like, I need a little bit of a break because, to your point, there's a lot of guys out there working hard and doing some physical stuff, and they do need some
Mm,
time out. But at the same time, I was a kid that was raised on TV,
mm,
and, like, yeah, I had access to bikes and games at a great neighborhood, and kids that we went out and we would go and play and do all that sort of stuff. But there was never kind of focused time, and my dad was never there participating or sort of taking me out.
yeah.
He taught me how to ride a bike and mow the lawns once, but, or
Hey,
at least,
if you had to teach more than once, you weren't listening, you should be able to do it properly.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, but then, that was the day when you get a bit of a backhand as
Yeah,
well, so it's the participation is really key, like,
yeah,
and that I
100%.
think is going to be the thing that your kids are really going to see. And the fact that you're there standing up for freedom, standing up for other people in their quest for freedom as well, and you're still having the time to be there for your kids and do the things that you do, I think is really, really cool. Hey, just before we wrap this up, one of the things that I saw that you talking about when I came across you months ago was around VPNs. Can you talk a little bit about them? Because I understand that as being something to help protect us safe online and from hacking and all that sort of stuff too.
Yeah, so VPNs, they have both a commercial and like a personal use. Like, I guess, like, a lot of companies use VPNs for legitimate commercial operations, but the vast majority of listeners will be familiar with them because of their personal use. So, like, they would take your IP and cloak it and make you in a different area, or relocate your IP so that you can access content in a different area. People use it for, like, Netflix and downloading things, and it's pretty much, yeah, it's like it teleports you digitally, so that's what a VPN is. But what a lot of people also use them for is for online anonymity. So, especially people like vulnerable speakers, and this is the annoying part of the debate. Yes, of course, people use them nefariously, and there's people who'd be silly with them, and so on and so on. But, like, people also crash cars. We're not going to ban everyone from driving cars. People also, buy fast food and get unhealthy. We're not going to stop everyone from buying fast food. So that sort of blanket approach doesn't really work. But so the move is, with obviously a lot of online regulation, how do you achieve that? Because the internet is effectively an open field with very few gates, right? There's the dark web, then there's the mainstream internet where most traffic is, but it's pretty hard to stop people from using the internet, but a bar from cutting the cables on the bottom of the ocean, turning off people's routers, or stopping VPN usage. So in the UK, this is a really good example. In the UK, they brought in age restrictions and age verification for accessing adult content, right? Which is actually really good. I think that you should have that stuff protected. That's genuine content that children shouldn't be seeing. And then what they reported was there was a 70% drop in traffic to the site Pornhub, right? Which they celebrated. On the back end of that, there was an over 100% increase in VPN signups in the UK. So what you haven't actually achieved is stopping people from accessing the content. They've just accessed it through VPNs, right? So then the argument then becomes, well, we should ban VPNs. But then again, VPNs are actually an essential service and tool that people use legitimately all the time on the internet. And banning VPNs would signal a really significant change and a huge shift in how governments interact with the market, right? They would effectively be removing a product from the market in order to achieve their means and justify it through safetyism, and they would be manipulating and affecting the market and then regulating access and control to the internet in that area, effectively creating an intranet. So that's what we've been warning about, is that it's one thing for your nation to put parameters on the internet that are easily bypassed, which we've said from the beginning. So it's pretty pointless. And then to pursue the tool in which people are bypassing your parameters with would be a huge shift and infringement on personal freedoms like access to information, to impart and receive and pursue certain answers and information which are protected in our Bill of Rights Act. So that's a speed run through the VPN issue. But this amazing guy, Dr. David Harvey, he's a former district judge. He's explored this issue. He's one of the leading commentators in legal and digital sort of happenings in New Zealand at the moment. He's got a Substack called Halfling's View. If anyone's more interested in like online regulation, VPN restriction, digital ID, he's written some really, really amazing things that have informed us a lot at Pillar. So he's awesome, and he's a great guy. He's actually, I think, the reason he's called the Halfling's View is he won a competition for general knowledge on The Hobbit. So he's like the world's leading most expert on The Hobbit, as well as being a judge. So he's
pretty unique set of skills.
Yeah. It's pretty tough to get sentenced for 9 months from a guy who's like loves hobbits, but you do the crime, you do the time, I guess,
Yeah, well, being 6'5", I'll be sure not to show up in his court one day.
No, exactly.
Awesome. So Nathan, in terms of Pillar, how do people support you? How do you? Yeah, because are you guys a charity? Are you, in terms of the work that you're doing with other people, with people out there?
So we're waiting for charity status. Not that hopeful that we'll get it. We've been waiting since August last year, and that's sort of the nature of the organizations that are in our space. We don't often get it, but we thought we'd try. So we're a company is our legal structure, but our constitution outlines that we're established for solely charitable purposes, fully donor funded. So fundraising is our only source of income, and to date we've had nearly 100 unique givers that have sort of helped us get Pillar started, which is really exciting and really cool. We've got a 3-year plan. You can view all of this on our website, nzpillar.com. You can see who we are, what we do, why we do it, all of our media. And effectively, we don't want people to give out a charity. We want people to see real value in what we're doing. So hopefully, if you like what we're doing, feel free to chip in. We have people give $2, $10, $50, $100. But more than anything, we'll do the work that hopefully you want to invest in. So yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah. Fighting for freedom, man. That's cool. I got one more question that's a bit of a hot one.
Please. Yes, tell me.
Man, it's an election year this year. As I mentioned before, with Chris Hipkins in terms of leader of the Labour Party, I just absolutely have zero trust in him anymore. Yeah. And not to mention, I also, as a dad, I also think that he's compromised as far as the mother of his children taking his kids over to Aussie.
Yeah.
As I said, I'm co-parenting, and I could not imagine just not being in the same city as my son.
Yeah.
And then obviously Luxon's way down. I think that he's kind of not really answering a lot of questions. I think there's a lot of global pressure that he's under to take New Zealand in sort of a certain direction. Winston Peters, I'm loving his chat. I always like him, and I like the fact that he's actually probably the only politician that's in there talking to the COVID inquiry, speaking outright in terms of where the heads that need to roll, but also speaking about literally putting New Zealand first. But I've spent 40 odd years with Winston Peters in Parliament, and I've seen him
Yeah.
say the thing to get into where he needs to, and then doing the complete opposite. So there's always an element of like mistrust with him, I should say. But he's definitely got the speak. David Seymour and ACT. For me, I voted for them in the last election because I was like, cool, all about the farmers. New Zealand's got a massive organic sector, 1.2 billion sector, but ACT are now one of the leading parties trying to push for the gene tech bill, which is, if that is allowed to enter into our country and its current legislation without those checks and balances, then I think that's going to completely put that sector at risk, because we live at a small island nation and the wind blows and bees fly.
Yeah.
And like the Greens Party, I mean, that again, going back to the gene tech bill, they're talking about literally everything except for the gene tech bill, which I think is what they pretty much started on, or Jeanette Fitzsimmons sort of started that on. So there's a big shift in policies, but also a lot of the, they definitely want to bring it, all of these different taxes as far as like capital gains tax, but also like a wealth tax and all of these other things. I'm kind of like, we're being taxed for stuff as we're earning and as we're going through it. Like, I don't want why should my children be taxed for the things that I've accumulated and I've been taxed on? So that's just kind of my opinion.
Exactly.
And obviously personal freedom, everyone's allowed to have a different opinion, and that's why we have a democracy.
Exactly.
So kind of laying that on the table for you, these are my opinions.
Yeah.
Where do you think there should be a bit of trust, or a little bit of, where do you think, maybe even just, I guess, a prediction in terms of where the voting might go this year? Or what, and also what do you personally think?
Yeah. Well, I can't believe you forgot the two Māori parties now. Obviously, we've got two of them, so I can't blame you for forgetting them. I mean, they're like the comedic relief. I enjoy every time they do anything. So it's
actually
good time.
Sorry, I do know that Te Pāti Māori are vehemently against the gene tech bill.
Well, do you just have, which one is that? Because there's two of them now. So the OG one, I think they had a schism. So
don't know.
Have you seen it? They got two parties now. It's great. So what do I think is going to happen? Yeah, there's two now, okay. Which is great. So what do I think is going to happen? High view, I think coalition will win again. To be more granular, I think you probably know most of what I would say as well. I think Winston, and I don't know if you follow global politics a little bit, but you've got like obviously the Nigel Farages in the UK who are just like storming through popularity, and then Pauline Hanson in Australia, and people clump Winston in with them. And he's similar in a sense as he's like a older nationalist, really nailing the lines at the moment. My only question is, can he run the country? Can his party govern? But he's saying all the right things at the right time, and I enjoy winning. So I like him. David, I think, is probably one of the most principled, or is the most principled politician in our parliament. Like, he's really consistent in terms of his how he thinks and how he operates and how he works. He's willing to engage in good faith debate. I really like him. I think that a coalition without him and Winston would have been horrible. Like anyone other than him and Winston in there balancing out sort of Luxon and National wouldn't have worked. I thought Luxon was going to get rolled a few months ago, and I was surprised he didn't. So I probably assume they're going to run with him through the election, and then off the back end of that, get rid of him halfway through the next term. But it'll be a coalition returning, but I think with a strong representation from New Zealand First, especially, maybe a little bit more from ACT, but probably not. I just don't think ACT has had that Treaties Principles Bill sort of talking point that they had last election, where they pulled them into the headlines a lot. Where with New Zealand First, they've smashed it with immigration. Like, people are really hot on what they're saying there. They've nailed it with like natural gas and oil exploration. People are really on board with that. And then National is just like, probably in my view, the useful idiot who's just like, you need them to form government because they're like big enough and they're mainstream enough, but they haven't, they're not that in the headlines, but they've been more successful than people give them credit for at the same time. So, and then Labour, I don't even look at Labour. Like Hipkins, I'm surprised they kept them on board. If they got a different leader in, they might have a crack, but I don't know if you heard their media training the other day. There's no one there who can string two words together. And then the Greens, Chloe's very appealing to young people, but anyone who sort of has worked in the world or has, like you say, accumulated some sort of inheritance, whether that be through property or through savings, they're probably not going to be keen on all those extra taxes. So yeah, I think probably you and I be on a similar page on most things based on what you just said then. It'll be, the real question will be, who do they replace Luxon with following the election? Because it can't really be Bishop or Willis. So we'll see. Well, it could be, but I don't think it will be. But yeah.
Interesting times.
We'll see.
Yeah.
But I think 6 months, or no, less than 6 months, but it's a long time in politics.
Anything could happen. Yeah. It's like an infant.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Now look, Nathan, it's great, man. And look, thank you very much for coming on tonight, man. I'm excited to hear, the work that you do, the way that you're raising your family, and where you've come from, and the multicultural nature of your life as well. And I guess kind of, yeah, putting New Zealand first.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it. Bring New Zealand. Yeah, it can't help that it just rolls off the tongue so well.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah, really appreciate the wisdom and the work that you do, man. So if people want to get in touch with you, they check out the Pillar
Yeah,
website.
Pillar website, nzpillar.com, or on all the social platforms at pillar_NZ. So reach out.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thanks, man.
See you next time.